If you've been collecting and reading manga in any sort of capacity for a decent amount of time, then this has probably happened to you. And it's one of my least favorite things in the world when it comes to manga or Western comics. And that's when something that you are loving, enjoying, collecting gets canceled. And I'm not talking about, as far as manga goes, I'm not talking about the series is canceled outright, like something like Black Torch or Zombie Powder, for instance. I'm talking about when you're reading a series that is complete or is still ongoing in Japan, and all of a sudden the English publication just stops. Or maybe you found out about a series and found a couple of volumes of it in English, and you go to, buy this older series, and all of a sudden you find out, oh, they never released the last X amount of volumes in the US. That's odd. And it sucks. And it's happened to me a lot, and I'm sure it's happened to a lot of you guys as well. And if it hasn't happened to you, that's awesome. Consider yourself lucky. But unfortunately, it is a thing that, at least back in the early 2000s and the early 2010s and stuff, it was something that happened pretty frequently. So I wanted to put together this video basically talking about 10 titles that I want to see continued. These were titles that were published at some point to some capacity. It reached a certain volume number, and then in the US, the English releases just halted. Now, some of these have they were canceled for different reasons. Some of these were released later digitally, stuff like that. But whatever the case, these are series that I would like to see. I haven't read all of these. Some of these are series that I want to see published because I would like to read them. And I know that I can read most of these online somehow anyway, but I'm just such a physical collector, as you can see from the stuff around me and the stuff in my collection videos, that I probably won't wind up reading these until they come out physically. So anyway, starting off the list, the first few are from Shonen Jump titles. Now the first one is one that was not very popular, so this is more of like a personal thing for me. There's not going to be a lot of people that want to see this one back, at least not as many as some of these other series. And that is Beat the Vandal Buster. Now this was one that was published, it was one of the earlier titles under the Shonen Jump banner, and I'm not entirely sure why they even decided to bring it into English. It was not terribly popular. The series went on for 12 volumes in Japan before going on a lengthy hiatus. And when I say lengthy, I mean like 10 plus years, or close to 10 years, that it was no longer being published in a regular basis. The series eventually did come back in Japan. It started being published under one of the Jump Square magazines, and now we have volumes 13 and 14 available. However, in English, we have not seen anything past that 12th volume, and unfortunately, because, like I said, it's not the most popular series in the world, I really doubt that Viz Media and Shonen Jump will wind up republishing it. Now, it's been out of print for a really long time. The volumes that are available in English are not that expensive if you go on Amazon or eBay. Some of them go for a little bit above cover, but you can probably buy them in a lot for undercover price if you are curious about this series. Now, there were 2 anime totaling about 80 episodes that were released for Beat. I don't know if... Now, because there's only 12 volumes and there's like 80 episodes of anime, I would imagine that there was a lot of filler, and I don't know if they had, because I never watched it. Maybe there was a conclusion in the anime. Anyone who has watched it can tell me in the comments. I don't know. Basically, what I'm saying, I don't know if they pulled a Full Metal Alchemist and got to a certain point adapting the manga, and then from that point made their own story to come up with their own ending and stuff. The series, though, was a fun action-adventure, all-ages series. It was kind of like an RPG. You had these characters. The main character's name is Beat. He is what is called a Vandal Buster. Basically, they're monster hunters for hire. They level up whenever they kill more monsters, basically gaining experience points and stuff like that. They all use their own specialized weapons. Beat is trying to follow in his hero's footsteps, which is a group of busters led by his brother. And he just wants to be a great buster. So it's kind of his adventures as he goes out there and fights a bunch of monsters. of differing levels, of differing, you know, strengths and stuff. So like I said, because it's not really the most popular title in the US or even in Japan, I don't see it ever continuing its English adaptation, which is really a shame because it is a really fun title. But I wanted to put this in my list because Beat was a title that I and a lot of my friends really did enjoy when it was coming out back in the early 2000s, mid 2000s and stuff. Now, the next two I don't have physical copies of, but they are books that were from Shonen Jump that I did buy until they got canceled in the US, and both of them hurt. They really did hurt when these got canceled, especially this first one. Reborn, or as it's known in Japan, I think it's Katekyo Hitman Reborn, was a series that in Japan lasted for 42 volumes before ending, and in the US we only made it to volume 17. Now this was a hard one when it happened because this series was one of my favorites when it was being released. I loved this title. The series followed a young man in Japan who finds out that he is meant to take over this mafia family. He's trained by a small baby-looking person named Reborn, who kind of teaches him how to do different, you know, in different ways of fighting and stuff. In a very typical shonen fashion, he meets with other friends. He has rivals and antagonists that become friends to him and kind of join his group. And it's a lot of fun fighting and different story arcs of different, you know, mob families and stuff like that. It was fantastic. It had great artwork. It's by Akira Amano. I think Psycho-Pass is a series that she did the character designs for. So Akira Amano did this series, fantastic artwork, very funny, great action, and then in the middle of a story arc in the US, just all of a sudden, I think there was even a preview at the end of volume 17 saying in the next volume of Reborn, and then it just stopped. Now, I would assume with this one and with the next one I'm going to mention that this is because of the popularity. It was not doing too well. I think maybe at the time that the manga market was kind of in a decline and they had to kind of let go of some stuff. But it really, really hurt that this was canceled because, like I said, it was one of my favorites, probably one of my top 5 that was being published at the time. And unfortunately, because I have such a preference for physical media, I still have not continued reading this series. One day I will. Now I know that the anime, it was also adapted into an anime that did get a Blu-ray release recently in the US. So while I guess it was not that popular in the US, I'd say that there's still maybe a little bit of a chance that it does get republished here. I think because of the fact that it has the anime release, because of the fact that Amano does have her design, her artwork on a popular series such as Psycho-Pass, and I think that her follow-up manga series is actually published digitally in the US. I think it might be on, if it's not on the Shonen Jump app, it might be on like Comixology or something. With all these things, I feel like there's a possibility that Viz could pick up Reborn again and maybe give it to us in 2-in-1 or 3-in-1 volumes to kind of speed up the release. Because unfortunately, even though it was never completed, the 17 volumes that do exist are pretty hard to find for a good price online. You wind up paying a pretty penny for some of those books. So they would have to start up from the beginning, hopefully not in just single volumes, because then it would take forever for them to finish it. I did own this series as it was coming out, but after I got, when I was getting married, I had to sell this and the next series just to make a couple extra bucks, because we did not have much money at the time. Anyway, so hopefully that happens. I would love to see Reborn brought back. The third and final of the Shonen Jump titles that I would love to see resurrected would be Gintama. Now, Gintama, a lot of people are very familiar with this one. This was a long-running series, went up to volume 77, actually concluding in Shonen Jump Weekly, or in Jump Weekly in Japan, kind of recently. In the US, we only got up to volume 24, which at the time, 24 volumes was not nearly as far behind Japan. But similar to Reborn, one day, all of a sudden, when volume 24 came out, there was just nothing after. And it was really bothersome. Now, the series is more of a comedy. It's kind of a parody on a lot of other shonen manga tropes and stuff. but it does have its own kind of storyline. It focuses on the main character of Gintoki and his group of friends, as they go forth and do things in this future world that's kind of based on kind of the romantic era Japan in a way, or feudal era Japan. I guess like if you think about the setting of like Rurouni Kenshin, or maybe more accurately, Golden Kamui, like the time that that was set in. Except it's everything looks like that, but it's in the future. So there's like aliens, robots, and stuff like that. It's a very fun series. It's funny. It's really good. Really nice artwork, interesting, fun characters. But I guess the audience just wasn't there in the U.S., at least not at the time, and it's been canceled. I don't know how good of a chance there would be that this one gets released in the US. And because it is 77 volumes, even if they do 2-in-1 or 3-in-1 volumes of this series to try and catch up or to try and finish sooner, it would take a while for them to do this. So this would be a long-term project for Viz and for Shonen Jump, for the Shonen Jump imprint. But I would love to see it, and I know that there are a lot of fans of Gintama out there who would love to see it as well. Next, and this one I do have physically, is a series that's anime was pretty popular with the younger audience on Cartoon Network back in the day. And I watched a few episodes here and there, and I never really picked it up until recently because of something else. And that series is Zatch Bell. Now, what's really funny about Zatch Bell is when I finally picked up the manga, I had no idea that it had been canceled in the US. So in the US, we had volumes 1 through 25 were published. In Japan, it ends with volume 33. So only a mere, 8 volumes from the end, and the series gets canceled. I think, again, that this is because of the popularity. It was not selling as well as they would have liked it to, so they went ahead and canceled the series in its English release, which is really unfortunate because it is very popular. I think that the reason it wasn't as popular in the manga as it was in the anime is because the anime was geared more towards a younger audience, and that audience who would have been the ones interested in buying the manga are the audience that doesn't really have the money to do it. So that would be my first guess as to why it didn't sell so well. But like I said, there was 25 volumes released in the US before it got canceled. Now, when I bought it, I found most of the volumes, probably like between 15 and 20 out of the 25, for like pennies on the dollar. And I bought them all, and I had them all in my collection, and I have a list of like things that I need to buy, series that I haven't finished purchasing yet. And I went online and I was trying to find volumes 26 through 33. I was like, man, I cannot find these volumes for a good price. This is ridiculous. And so I was going out and trying to ask people like, hey, if you go to this bookstore and you see something, if you see something at used bookstores, let me know. I really want to collect the rest of the series. And it wasn't until a while later that I wound up finding out that the reason I couldn't find them for a good price, and the ones that I was finding for a more expensive price turned out to be in French, and I just didn't realize that, was because it had been canceled. So that kind of sucked because I collected most of it, and then I found out that it was canceled. But the reason I became interested in it was because of this series, Animal Land, that's published by Kodansha. I did not know at the time that I was picking it up that it was actually by the same creator, Makoto Raiku. I picked up Animal Land because I was intrigued by some of the artwork on the covers. I thought this was a really, really cool looking cover. I liked the artwork, so I wanted to check it out. So I found a couple volumes for cheap on eBay. I read it, I really enjoyed it, and then I found out, oh, this is from the same guy that did Zatch Bell. And then I bought Zatch, and then I found out that it had been canceled, and now I'm sitting here wishing that maybe Kodansha would pick it up, since Kodansha does publish Animal Land, or did publish Animal Land, and that maybe they would re-release it in new, maybe 3-in-1 volumes, possibly similar to the way that they've done stuff like Vinland Saga, and Saiyuki is a good example, since Saiyuki was a Tokyo Pop series that they are now releasing in new hardcover volumes. I think that Zatch Bell had enough popularity behind it that it is something that could happen. I feel like there's a chance that this one could wind up getting resurrected and republished in English. Moving on, the next couple I don't have physically, and these are both Tokyo Pop series. Now, Tokyo Pop, I don't remember what year it was, but they went under. and a lot of series wound up getting canceled. There were some series that, even though they were canceled, other publishers picked them up and finished out their run. So, for instance, Samurai Deeper Kyo, Tokyo Pop published the first 34 volumes out of 38, and then we saw Del Rey Manga, who is now no longer around, published the last 4 in these 2 double-length volumes. And then the same goes for Rave Master from Hiro Mishima, who's famous for Fairy Tail. They published the first 32 out of 35, and then Kodansha picked it up and put the last 3 volumes in this one thick volume. So some Tokyo Pop series survived and actually did get completed. But there were others that were not so lucky. One of the big ones was Initial D. Initial D ran in Japan for 48 volumes. In the US, it was canceled at volume 33. Unfortunately, it has not been picked back up physically, but Kodansha is publishing it digitally. You can read it on Comixology. So that says to me, with the popularity of Initial D, how popular the anime series were and are, because there's still more stuff, I believe, like movies and whatnot coming out, I feel like there is a chance that we could wind up seeing Initial D released. I guess it might depend on what the sales are like on the digital volumes, if there's enough of an outcry for it, but it is a popular enough series that I could see Kodansha giving us maybe 2-in-1 hardcovers, 2-in-1 paperbacks, re-releasing the entirety of this insanely popular series. It was actually recently that I watched the anime for the first time, I think maybe 2, maybe 3 years ago, and before, I thought it was kind of silly, a racing anime. It's, got really crappy CG effects from the 90s and early 2000s. But I checked it out, and it has such a fun story, such high energy to it, interesting characters, that I was really upset when I found out that the manga was not available. It was not complete in the US. So this one, I'm really hoping at some point happens. And then the next one, the last one from Tokyo Pop, is Beck Mongolian Chop Squad. Now, I have not read nor watched this one, but I know enough about it, and I've been interested in it for long enough that I would really love to see this out. Not as much was published of this one as was Initial D from Tokyo Pop, only the first 12 out of 34. And like Initial D, this one is published digitally by Kodansha, available to read on Comixology. I know a lot of people who really love this series which follows a 14-year-old kid who winds up rescuing a dog and meeting this 16-year-old who's kind of a budding rock star. He starts hanging out with the guy, gets interested in Western rock music, and they start to form a band, and it kind of follows them as they perform their music. I know that the anime was pretty popular as well, and I know since it's a music series, it's more likely to be popular in the anime because it is, they're actually portraying the music and playing the music in the series. So this one, like I said, I've never read it, but I'm very interested in it. I would love to be able to collect it physically in some fashion, paperback, hardcover, whatever, and that it is already owned by Kodansha, to me, makes it seem like there's more of a chance that it could happen. This next one, though, is one of those that I don't think there's as much of a chance that this could happen. This one is a little bit of an oddball, and that is Cromartie High School. A lot of people might not know this series. A lot of people might actually know it from the anime that came out. There was a 13, I don't remember, it might have been 26 episodes, but it was one of those that was only 11-minute episodes that adapted a decent portion of this manga. It was a comedy series that followed our main character, as the main character being the big head right here, not the small guy here, as he was enrolled into a new high school, and he quickly finds out that this is not your average high school. It's one that's made up of a ton of really crazy, really dangerous punks, basically. And he finds very quickly that they're not the regular punks that you see in schools. They're not the normal, pompadour wearing Japanese school kid punks. There are a lot of strange people that show up in this school. We've got a robot, a smaller robot, a gorilla, a guy that looks like Freddie Mercury who is riding around on a horse oftentimes. So there's a lot of really strange people that show up in this series, and it's basically about the main character's misadventures as kind of the fish out of water in this school, who winds up falling backwards into this prominent role amongst all of the punks around him. Now, the manga series ran for 17 volumes in total. In the US, we had the first 12 volumes released by ADV Manga. ADV Manga is now no longer around, neither, I believe, is ADV Films. So we never saw the last 5 volumes published in the US. Luckily, because it is a comedy series, there's not really much of an ongoing plot. There is ongoing plot lines with some of these characters, but you could buy and read these 12 volumes and more or less be satisfied by the end of it. I would love, though, to see those last few volumes collected. I don't know what publisher might be able to pick it up. I don't know if anyone has already picked it up. I don't even know if this one is available online. I don't keep up with as much of that stuff. So it could be available through Comixology or something for all I know. But it is something that just because they got so... I mean, not only because. I loved this series. It was fantastic. It was really funny, great comedic timing throughout. And because they were so close, only 5 volumes from the end, I would love to see them at some point, some publisher release those last 5 volumes in physical editions. Do I think it's very likely to happen? Probably not. Do I still want it to happen? Absolutely. In these last 3 that I have on my list, these 3 were all published under a magazine that was not very well known. In the US, of course, everyone knew about Shonen Jump magazine. It had its spin-off Shoujo Beat, but there was another magazine that came out every month, published by Gutsoon, which was called Raijin Comics. Now, Raijin Comics it would do, I think, 1 chapter per month of a bunch of different series. And it lasted for almost 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. So it had a decent run, and it had a lot of really popular series. But unfortunately, only one of those series out of all of them actually made it into... or got taken by another publisher after the magazine went defunct and was completely published, and that was Slam Dunk. So Slam Dunk was originally, in the US, was published under Raijin. I think they had a few volumes released from Gutsoon, and then after the magazine went down and there was no more plans to publish it, Viz got the rights, and Viz went ahead and published it under their Shonen Jump label. Thank God, they published the entire series from start to end. I am very thankful because this is one of my absolute favorite series of all time. But unfortunately, all of the other manga that were in Raijin Comics, none of those, as far as I've been able to tell, have been picked up by other publishers, and none of them have continued past that point that they were published in that magazine. So I have 3 of them here that I would love to see come out in English again. The first one here is probably the biggest of the 3. Actually, I'm going to say it is the biggest, the most popular of the 3. And this is one that's... 2 different publishers have tried to publish it in the past. For some reason, has failed both times, and now it's just not happening. I don't know if in any of these cases there's some reason that it's not being published. Maybe there's a holdup with a publisher, some issue with the rights. Let me know in the comments, because it's something I'm just not aware of. But I don't know. If that's the case here, then that explains a lot, because this is such a popular series that I am surprised it has not been picked up somewhere by some publisher, and that is Fist of the North Star. Now, Fist of the North Star, like I said, it was published originally by someone else before it went to Raijin. It was published by Viz Media. Viz released 4 of these paperbacks, and before these paperback collections, they also released a bunch of single issues. Those single issues were then collected in these paperbacks. There were 4 of these, like I said. I've only got the first out of the 4, and it only collects a small portion of the whole series, as it was in Japan. But I picked this up because I found it really cheap at a bookstore, and I was like, oh, it's, I'll grab, even though I know I'm never going to have the whole series in English, I'll pick it up just for, for fun. It's such a popular, well-known, and just a series that is influential in so many different series that I am beyond surprised that no publisher picked it up from Raijin, that Viz didn't pick it back up and try to put it out in new editions. But I would absolutely love to see them finally do it and finally release the series in its entirety from start to finish for the first time in English. it would be, to me, I think it would be really awesome if they release it in those signature size volumes. Maybe do something like the Monster or 20th Century Boys Perfect collections, or like Urusei Yatsura, where it gets a 2-in-1 edition. That would be fantastic. I'm super interested in it. Just, again, it surprises me because the anime was super popular. We've seen a Blu-ray release recently. There's video games that are coming out still in the US, yet the manga is still left unpublished. And as a bonus, there was also Fist of the Blue Sky that was also in Raijin Comics, which was also canceled after however many volumes. Raijin, though, they got through a little bit more than Viz did. They had a little bit more of the series published, and they also released what they called, I think, the perfect editions of the series, or maybe there was another name I'm forgetting, that were in full color, and there was 7 or 9 volumes of that, the full color version of Fist of the North Star, and those go for insane prices if you look up on eBay. But yeah, that one, I honestly, why it isn't already still published in the US, I don't know. Again, if someone knows if there's an issue with the publishing rights, let me know in the comments. But I would love to know, and I would really love to have this series published in English in its entirety. Now, the next one, oh, I forgot, I do not have the rest of these. The other 2 from Raijin that I've chosen that I think should be published, I haven't read either of these, but it's basically due to their cultural influence and how popular they are overseas and in different media. The first one is City Hunter, which has a popular anime series and has a popular Jackie Chan movie, which a lot of people are aware of the movie. I've watched the movie, love the movie, but for some reason, after Raijin went defunct, City Hunter just kind of sat and has never been republished. They got through the first 5 volumes out of 35, so they made a small chunk in the releases, but those 5 volumes are very hard to find now, as, you know, they came out, God, 15 years or something ago, and they've been out of print since then. But I would love to see this one also released in English for the first time, in its entirety, all 35 volumes again, maybe do some sort of special release like the 2-in-1s for Urusei Yatsura. And then the final one, and this one out of this entire list probably has the most chance of actually getting an English release, and that is Baki the Grappler, by Keisuke Itagaki, who is actually the father of the creator of Beastars. Only 42 chapters worth of this series were released via Raijin Comics. It was never collected in paperbacks, as far as I've been able to find via my searching and my research. But this is one of those series that, similar to JoJo or Kinnikuman, has multiple parts, or like Kaiji. It has multiple parts. So in total, all of its parts together, there are over 130 volumes of Baki material in Japan. Now, there is a publisher that has been releasing it digitally in English, a publisher called Media Do, and they themselves have expressed interest in releasing the series. Not only, now, let me go back for a second. Media Do is releasing English digital volumes of the second Baki series, just called Baki. They have expressed interest in releasing physical copies of not only the second series that they've been doing digitally, but also going and doing the first series in physical editions. So I don't know anything about Media Do. I don't know how big of a company they are. I don't know anything else that they do as far as physical or digital releases. I haven't looked into that myself, but I do know that they've expressed interest in doing this, which, like I said, makes Baki probably the most likely out of every series on this list to see a physical English release. But as I mentioned, there's multiple parts. There's over 130 volumes of material in Japan. So if they did decide to release this stuff, it would take a really long time for them to actually release anything close to getting caught up with the US. But I would say at the very least, if they get the classic series out there, then that's something that I would appreciate, and I would love to have it. However they release it, however long it takes, I would love to have it on my shelves. And also, there was a recent anime adaptation that's on Netflix. I believe that's why we have the digital release, the manga from Media Do. So, yeah, there's a better chance of this one than anything else, and I really hope it does happen because it's a legendary fighting series. And what I did read when it was being published in Raijin Comics was very interesting, very good, very fun stuff, very nice artwork. So those are the 10 series that I've chosen to list here in this video that I would like to see resurrected for release in English. Like I said before, I've read some of these, I haven't read some of these, I own some of these, I don't own some of these. Some of these have more chance to get published again in English than others, but overall, these are all series that I would love to see published in English. If you agree with these, let me know in the comments. But more importantly, if you have other series that you see that have gotten canceled in their English releases that you would like to see continue in English, please let me know what those series are in the comments. I'd love to know about them. There are some that I know myself that I haven't talked about, but these are the 10 that I chose because I needed to limit this so this video didn't go on for an hour. But yeah, let me know what you think about these, about others, whatever. Thank you so much for watching. I know this is a little bit of a lengthy video, but I hope that it was enjoyed. This is a little bit of a project that I've been working on for a little bit, just trying to gather all the information to say all this stuff that I wanted to say. And I'm hoping that some of these some of these series do see physical publication at some point in the near future for us. I would love to see that. Now, of course, if you like the video, press the thumbs up. Go ahead and subscribe if you have not yet, and hit the bell so you do get notifications every time I put out new videos. And I hope that everyone is staying healthy and happy and safe out there, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Later.